I'm Mike Tilton. Let's talk Subaru. I want to talk about the stock PCV system on my Subaru. I put a built motor in this car, and I did very little research on how the stock PCV system worked, and I ran across a few issues with oil getting in my intake track, causing rough starts, hesitation at idle, off idle, and smoke coming out of the exhaust on startup. And I wanted to fix all these problems, so I started doing a little research. Came across the fact that I needed an Air-oil separator to fix most of these problems. So I started looking into it. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to show you how the stock PCV system works on a Subaru. This is the little branch tube, and this portion right here sticks on the bottom of the crankcase vent. And this little portion right here with the PCV valve goes into the bottom of the intake below the throttle body, right on the intake manifold. And this side goes right to the turbo inlet. While the engine is running, it is pulling vacuum from the crankcase. And what that does is it gets all the contaminated oil and pressure out of the crankcase, so you don't have oiling issues inside the car. And you have the PCV valve. Under boost, it would push this little valve out, and it would hold pressure. But then once you let off boost and it starts running under vacuum, it would pull it out, and all the oil only has like this far to go. And the oil would come right up through there and then immediately in this short little pathway right into the intake. And then it would start coursing its way through the intake. If it gets enough oil pressure built up, it will come up right through here and drop right into the intake, right here, right before the turbo. And this stock PCV system, you know, if you're running high boost pressure, it tends to build up a lot more crankcase pressure than stock. And so a lot more oil comes through. And that was the problem I was having. And also part of this system for the crankcase breather and the PCV valve are the cylinder head vents. So you have these little ports clear down here. They're really hard to see without the motor being torn apart. But they come up and around and into the intake right down here. And they are there to relieve cylinder head oil pressure. So the stock PCV system is woefully inadequate. And what I need to do is get a upgrade that will keep oil from getting into my intake track. So I went ahead and I cleaned out my entire intake already. And I was able to pull out about a half a cup of oil from the bottom of my intercooler and throughout my piping. So that's all cleaned out. And I've removed the stock PCV system. And now we're going to install basically its replacement. What I have here is IAG's Air-oil Separator. And what this whole kit right here is going to do is replace this. So when this had a small tube to hold whatever oil was coming in, this has this ginormous port right here. So whatever oil would fill the PCV valve and overwhelm it, there's plenty of room in here. And so you have the 3 ports where crankcase and cylinder head oil and vapors would go in. There's a swirl pot in here, and this is the Competition Series, which actually replaces the PCV valve altogether. And then you have your vacuum port here. And if a lot of people vent this to atmosphere, but I plan on running E85 here real soon, so I am going to put this under vacuum to the intake manifold so I can get crankcase oil contaminants out of the crankcase so my oil will last a little bit longer. And this has coolant lines that will heat the oil and all the water vapor and everything that gets in here and is able to burn off the evaporated water and return fresh oil right back to the top of the crankcase. And some of these don't have some Air-oil separators, or just a regular catch can don't happen to have that, and you get this crazy funky milky mess at the bottom of your separator, and you do not want that going back in your engine. So the fact that this burns off all the moisture and keeps all the oil relatively clean before it goes back in, It's a major benefit. The Competition Series is actually designed to work with a variety of Subaru setups. I happen to have a front mount intercooler. I have a strut bar. I want to keep my cruise control. So there's different setups for this. And if somebody has a top mount, you know, you may have to set this up differently. And if you have like a V-mount, rotated intake manifold, rotated turbo, you know, they make a lot of possibilities to make this work with a lot of different cars. And they have a lot of different hoses, and all these hoses will work and with a whole bunch of different setups. So let's find out where we can put this bad boy on my car. When I was reading the instructions on how to install the Competition Series onto my car, with a strut mount and the front mount intercooler that I have, the way they recommend is to use this bracket, but it also gets rid of my cruise control. And I love cruise control. I don't want to get rid of my cruise control. And I also don't want to get rid of my strut mount as well. So I am not going to use this particular bracket. So we'll throw it off to the side for right now. And what I'm going to do is find out exactly where I want to put this, where all the hoses will work, and I will make my own bracket. Now, looking at my car, I know that I need this bottom drain to be pretty close to this side of the turbo, because I'll have the branch tube coming up, and that's where I want that to go. I also need my coolant lines to be able to tap into this top coolant line and this bottom coolant line. Then I also need some room to get my crankcase vent and my 2-cylinder head vents. And so if I look at this right, and I think I could actually probably fit this bad boy like right about here, and that should work pretty good. But the bad part is I got to make a custom bracket to make this work right here. And hopefully the hood will close, but I guess we can adjust the height on that. So to find a bolt, let's go ahead and remove the charge pipe, make a little room, and we'll see where we can mount a bracket. Let's take this bad boy off here. Alright, charge pipe out of the way. Because I think I can make like a V'd section with a little gusset, and then a flat section with the holes. That should just mount the Air-oil separator right there in that corner. To make my custom bracket, I happen to have just like some scrap steel, funny little brackets, you know, and I'll, as I work on different cars, I find these little brackets and I'm like, oh, they're interesting. I'll keep those for future use. And they're gonna come in real handy right now because I'll be able to use some of these things, cut them, bend them, weld them together, and I'll come up with a really sweet bracket, make this thing work. I know I want to use this hole right here that kind of holds the top of the cruise control, and this hole here that kind of holds this bracket for whatever this part is. And so I can use those, and so what I need is like something that would go from there to there, and then have like a little piece that I can drill some holes on that would hold the Air-oil separator on. So let's do some cutting. Maybe I'll find a different bracket than this one, but this one should work really nicely. I'm making the bracket that the Air-oil separator is actually going to attach to, and this is the bracket that came with the kit, and these are the 3 holes that I want to transfer to this. And then I'll reshape this and weld it to my bracket that I have going. So we'll make some center points. Alright. Now we'll go to the drill press. Alright, let's put these brackets together. Alright. We'll paint this bad boy and give him a nice second coat of gloss black. Then we'll talk about this bad boy. Well, here's the bracket that I custom made. I made it out of 3 different brackets and added a little gusseting right there to give it a little extra stability. And this goes into this hole over here. Right there. And the other one, actually, I utilized one of the spacers from the kit. So it came with a bunch of spacers. And so this one basically goes in this way. So let me get this little O-ring, which is actually very useful in this, keeps it in place. So this spacer, we'll put it to the 10mm cruise control bolt. And the other one goes into the bolt that holds this thing. And it puts it exactly where I want it to be. Alright. Nice. Alright, there's my finished bracket, and I'm actually really impressed with how well how sturdy that is. So, a lot more sturdy than whatever that thing is too. So, now that my bracket's in place and I know where my Air-oil separator is going to sit in the car, it's time to put on these bad boys. They look like AN fittings, I guess, with a O-ring. So we'll put these guys on, and then we'll put the bottom one on and bolt it in place, and then run all the other lines. There we go, there's the coolant lines, and now we'll put the oil drain line on, and all the other lines should be pretty easily accessed. So for those, we're going to need zip ties. So in place of the stock PCV valve, I put a plug inside the intake manifold. And that's the part that's going to make me need to get a tune with the Competition Series. Now the Street Series has a built-in PCV valve on the top of the Air-oil separator, and you run a tube from there. They have like a barbed fitting, and it goes up to the top and retains the function of the stock PCV valve, but with the added benefit of that entire canister to keep oil from coming in. So I've chosen the way to plug it completely and run a constant vacuum from crankcase gases, and but I will need a retune to make sure that the car is running properly. Now I've already taken the liberty to measure out all the different hoses. This one goes to my cylinder head over here. This one comes from the cylinder head over here. This one goes straight down to the crankcase, and then there, provided in the kit, has a little T, and this is the oil drain that'll go attached to the bottom of the Air-oil separator. And so, let's put this bad boy in, and we're going to put the bottom one on first before I bolt this to my bracket, and we'll put a zip tie on there, because they recommended having zip ties on all the fittings to keep them from falling off. Put the zip tie over this first. And this goes on the drain. So, on you go. Nice. Okay, so my Air-oil separator is going to be right about there. Alright. So it's time to see how well I engineered this bracket. See how easy it is to get these bolts in. Nice, there's one. Air-oil separator is in place. Alright, so now I've run the crankcase breather tube to the bottom of the drain tube, and now I need to put this on the bottom of the Air-oil separator, the bottom of the 3 ports here. So he goes right there. Tighten this guy. let's see here, the driver's side cylinder head. He runs right in here, in the middle. I'm not terribly sure if it matters if you put each cylinder head on which one, but either way, that's what they recommended on the instructions, so we'll go with that. Passenger side cylinder head. So that's the 3 breather valves. And you want to keep these as level as possible. You don't want like a bunch of dips in the lines so the oil can pool up. So that's usually a big no-no. And this is the coolant line. Get this bad boy on here. Alright, nice fit. Excellent. So that's the drain back, and this one is the feed. This is what's going to keep my air-oil separator nice and toasty. It'll keep all the moisture out of it, so it doesn't have condensation, because water and oil don't mix very well. There we go. Nice fit. The only thing we have left to do is the big daddy here. And there's a reason why he's so big, because they want a minimum pull of vacuum up here. Because that way when oil does get in here, it has a swirl pot, and as it goes around, it slows down the velocity by having such a big tube right here. And it gives the oil a better chance to separate and go back down to the crankcase. All right, I think that's it. Put on the charge pipe and fire up and see how she idles. All right, all done. Looks great. It's exactly where I wanted it to be. And now hopefully all the benefits of an air-oil separator are going to be coming my way. I won't have these smoky start outs and rough idle and tons of oil in my intake, so we'll see. Now here's the real test. Air-oil separator's been installed for a little while, and it's been working great. And let's fire it up. Normally she'd blow a bunch of smoke out on startup. No smoke. All right, I've been able to drive around my Subaru a little while with the air-oil separator installed. There's been some major benefits. Before, as I said, there has been a lot of oil getting into my intake tract through the stock PCV system. And since this replaced that, I haven't had any issues with starting up with blowing out smoke when I start up on a cold start or even a warm start. And risks of detonation with oil contaminating the air. And so I've had this on for a little while. Let's check and see just how well it's been doing. Alright. Let's see what we got in here. This is the pipe leading directly to the intake. Alright. Nothing. That is awesome. Not a drop of oil. So this air-oil separator is certainly doing its job, and I've been really pleased with it. The benefits of having this air-oil separator installed is that I am no longer blowing smoke out on cold starts or even warm starts, and that's been really nice. I've also noticed that when I start it up from a warm start and I rev it up, it used to have this hesitation, totally gone. And it seems to rev more eagerly, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's zero oil in my intake tract now, and there's only benefits with that. So anyway, super happy with it, and I would recommend it to anybody with a built motor, or even a highly modified stock motor, because the stock PCV system pretty much sucks. So This is a major upgrade and nothing but benefits.
Ready and go.
I'm gonna be a little more casual.
Yeah, come on. Casual.
And this part goes right into the intake manifold, or the turbo inlet. Oh, let me redo that whole thing, dude. Whoa, total mind blank.
2, 1.
It's been a little while. Oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna start differently, and just give you an overall. And I want to show you the benefits that I've. I'm not blowing out smoke. Sorry. Okay, let's try that one more time. Air-oil separator in. Okay, one more time. That was good, wasn't it? This is gonna be hard to edit with a one long video, right? Do you want to start it over or start anyone? All right. Okay.